Hi, everybody, and welcome to City Beat. I'm your host, Nancy Byrne, and we are coming to you from Studio Control at KCLV TV. It is not open to the public, and my photographer, Steve Horlock, and I are socially distancing, so no mask. Imagine for just a moment that you're in the hospital with an injury or an illness, and the staff determines you can be discharged. Well, you and I would probably be thrilled to go home and be surrounded by loved ones to help us complete our healing. But what if you didn't have a home or loved ones? Well, all too often that's what happens to our homeless population. It's not the hospital's fault. They can't keep people in their beds indefinitely, and our shelters, well, they're not really equipped to help with rehab. Wouldn't it be great if there was a place our homeless population could go in between the hospital and whatever is next? Well, there is a place like that now in Las Vegas, and it's a model being looked at across the country. When we see homeless people on the streets, we usually assume there's a financial reason they are without a home. But all too often, there are medical reasons for their struggles as well. Like this woman who asked not to be identified. We'll call her Jody. She struggles with COPD, a pulmonary illness.
I've been hospitalized 11 times in 2 years. The shortest stay was 8 days, the longest 24. So it wasn't just minor things, on a respirator 3 times in a coma.
Not long after her last hospital stay, she ended up at the Courtyard, a homeless shelter and resource center in Las Vegas. That stay at the Courtyard ended up changing her life.
The rescue lady brought me over here, and I've been here for 2 weeks. I was homeless 2 weeks previous to that. Tomorrow I move into my own place. They have been marvelous. I have to say, I think they saved my life.
This is the Recuperative Care Center in downtown Las Vegas. The doors just opened here August 25th, and already they've saved or changed the lives of many people just like Jody. The motto here is everyone deserves a safe place to heal. It fills a gap in healthcare for the homeless, targeting 2 of the most vulnerable populations on our streets.
One would be folks that are being discharged from the hospital, and it could be because they've had surgery. They could have non-healing wounds, and they could have people that require wound care or maybe some intensive medical care for a series of 1-2 days, 1-2 weeks after being discharged from the hospitals. The other patient population that we're really looking at here is identifying folks that are homeless out in the streets that would have serious medical conditions that effectively could result in the loss of life, limb, or eyesight in the next 6 to 12 months due to their medical condition from being on the streets.
Dr. Mark Ogrifa oversees the medical staff here at this 24-hour facility. There are nurses, paramedics, certified nursing assistants, 38 beds, and 2 isolation units. But this is not just a respite center for physical healing.
In addition to that, we also have caseworkers, we have social workers that are able to go and put a continuum of care together, that we can identify gaps in the services that maybe they're not receiving. Maybe they're not getting their Social Security, maybe their Medicare, Medicaid components are not being addressed, and we have a team that's highly experienced here that have access to additional resources.
The idea was born out of the city of Las Vegas setting up the ISOQ during the pandemic at Cashman Center. It was a temporary facility for homeless individuals struck with the coronavirus. But along with medical help, it also had caseworkers on hand to help patients transition to a better life after being discharged.
Typically, you and I would be discharged home, and we could finish our healing process, get back on our feet, and move forward. And unfortunately for the homeless population, they're relegated back to the streets. And so it creates a cycle of returning to the ERs and these high-cost systems, and medical respite is designed to interject in the middle of that and hopefully break that cycle.
Here's how it works. The medical and community services teams work with partners in our city shelters and those who comb the streets aiding the homeless. When someone is identified as needing respite or recuperative care, they are encouraged to come to the center.
We don't want to necessarily recreate the wheel. There are organizations out there that do really good work. And so we want to collaborate, and we want to be able to join forces and really spearhead kind of this new approach of getting folks back on their feet.
Their very first patient was a homeless man who coded at the Courtyard, was revived, hospitalized, and then brought to the center. He went from dying to living on his own.
That being our very first patient, I said to the entire team, I was like, that's a sign. This is a center and a service that is badly needed for the most at-risk and vulnerable patients within our community.
The Care Center fills a gap in care for our homeless that was missing, not just in Las Vegas, but in cities across the country.
Working with the city, working with the Office of Community Services, means that we're in a position for the very first time, number one, to be able to provide that kind of those homeless healthcare services, but at the same time, we are setting a new model. And this facility, the way that we have structured it, the way that we have put the respite community services component together is the first of its kind in the nation.
And it is working. There are success stories in just weeks of operation.
If we don't break these outmoded patterns of behavior, then what are we doing all of this for anyway? And so even if someone does choose to return back to literal homelessness, maybe they down the road decide, wait a minute, there was something a little easier, a little kinder, a little softer, and let me give that another shot.
They call us guests, and that's how they treat us, as if we're guests. Ever since I've been here, they've treated me with so much respect and kindness and, care. And it gives you back your self-respect.
The center is located at 1581 North Main Street. Now, I asked them how long the guests are allowed to stay there, and I'm told they stay there until they're medically cleared. And in some cases, they can even stay a little bit longer if there's a housing unit being prepped for them. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to show you how some local celebrities keep their cool in the summer heat. And on the topic of those on the medical and emergency front lines, our very own Thunderbirds on August 31st did a flyover in a show of appreciation.
Me and my boy Matt had it good. He had catnip that was off the hook. But one day, he brings a girl home, and she's allergic to cats. Every sneeze was a nail in my coffin. Now I'm in a shelter. It's decent, but they don't even have Wi-Fi.
Clean kitchen surfaces, utensils, and hands with soapy water. 1 in 6 Americans will get sick from food poisoning this year. Keep your family safer. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to City Beat from the KCLV TV studio control room. Well, the building was built more than 50 years ago and has been typically occupied by very popular Mexican restaurants. Most recently, El Sombrero, until that closed down a couple of years ago. Well, now it has a new name, a new look, and a new owner, and it's serving up art in the form of murals and cuisine. You can't miss the colorful, artistic exterior of Letty's. It's only fitting this new restaurant is located in the Arts District. On August 31st, former owners, the Rivero family, and new owner and chef Letitia Mitchell joined together to celebrate the opening of Letty's. It will offer a casual atmosphere combined with traditional Mexican dishes. Councilwoman Olivia Diaz, who represents this area of Las Vegas, told the group gathering for the ribbon cutting, many people don't think we embrace history in Las Vegas. But this new restaurant in this old building epitomizes the way we celebrate combining the old with the new.
We do have some history, even though we continue to reinvent ourselves. We do honor what was here, the railroad, the train still goes by, and every time now that I will see that train ride past my window, I'll always think about Leti's, and then I'll be craving Mexican food. So it's a win for you. 1, 2, 3.
After the ribbon cutting, people headed inside to find more art on the walls and a cheerful spot to order up street tacos and a cocktail in a new meeting place in the downtown Arts District. Letty's is located at 807 Main Street in the heart of downtown. Now, you may have noticed, because we're in monsoon season, the incredible rain we've been experiencing. No? Actually, this is one of the hottest and driest summers on record since the 1930s. Now, on a previous City Beat, we introduced you to some horses who star in the show Gladius the Show. More about that in a minute. But first, we want to show you how these celebrities keep their cool in this hot, dry summer. It's still before noon on this farm in the Northwest, and already the temperatures are nearly triple digits and showing no signs of slowing down. You might think these giant Belgian and Percheron horses would dread this weather. But why would they, when every morning and late afternoon they get to play in the water? These guys may weigh in at 2,500 pounds, but when the hose comes out, they're just like little kids.
Hi, Titus. You being pushy?
Alethea Shelton is co-owner of the horses and a performer in the show in which they are featured, Gladius the Show. She says this ritual is just as enjoyable for her as it is for them.
Right when it starts hitting 100 degrees, we'll come out here in the morning, and before I feed them, my normal morning ritual is grabbing the hose, and right when they see me, they kind of start flocking to the fence. And I spray them off for as long as they want, and some of them, you know, like to turn around and get it all over their bodies. Some of them like to get the hose in their mouth, and they just entertain me.
Some like to just get hosed down. Others act as though they don't have a completely full water trough. They do. But it becomes a game to see how much they can drink from the hose. They all have their own routine.
And then Cayman, one of the Percherons, will come over to the water trough and use his head to splash himself sometimes. So he really likes he likes it a lot. So they're all kind of different.
Some of the horses could take or leave the water game, so if you're one of the many nearby neighbors who drive by or stop by to see them and you see one appearing to be left out of the water game, don't worry. It's his choice. You know, you can lead a horse to water.
Especially when you don't know horses or you've never owned them, you can drive by and it feels really hot when you get out of your air-conditioned cars and, you know, you're wondering how they're standing out there in the sun. And our horses have adequate shade, but some of them will often choose to just lay out and sunbathe in the middle of the day, which I think they're crazy. But they adapt.
They adapt really well to the different weather conditions. I mean, there's horses in absolute below zero weather that do well, and there's horses obviously out here that do well. But we're ours are a little overly pampered.
These giant guys get most of the attention by passers-by because, well, they're giant. But the rest of the gang, also part of the show and the farm, are never ignored. In fact, they make sure of it.
And then we've got Aries, who wants to make sure everyone knows he's around.
They are our children because, one, they take a lot of care, so we have to be here present, you know, feeding them and everything. But there's 4 of us that work kind of around the clock with them, so we work in shifts, and we're always communicating with each other, and our eyes are always on them. We're always making sure they're taken care of.
I first discovered those beautiful horses when I moved up to the northwest part of our city a few years ago, but I never knew the story behind them. I just admired the way they would saunter up to the fence and say hello when I'd be out on my walks. It was actually photographer, editor Steve Horlock who discovered their story and enabled us to do a story on Gladius the Show. You're technically in the city of Las Vegas, but out here in the great Northwest, and you come upon this, a property just over 2 acres in size with 17 horses. Some so large when they run you can actually feel the earth move under your feet.
Half of them are big draft horses. Most of them are Belgians, between 18 and 19 hands. And they're between 2,000 to 2,500 pounds. And then we have a black Percheron. So those are the draft horses.
Also part of the group are smaller horses, but equally impressive in their appearance and grace.
The other horses are Aztecas. We have 3 Aztecas, which is half Andalusian, half quarter horse. We have 2 miniature horses. We have a Arabian Stallion and then 2 Norwegian Fjords.
This is not just someone's idea of collecting a variety of horses for a hobby. The 17 horses, along with a group of trainers, aerialists, and vaulters, make up the team that performs Gladius, the show. Here's a small taste. Eric Matanovich and Alethea Shelton are co-owners of the team. Eric's wife, Lisa, also has a hand in the creative direction of the show. All of the performers are dedicated to making sure the show is worth seeing over and over again.
Well, the show is kind of me and Alethea's brainchild, and it's one of the really interesting things with it is that we never stop evolving it. Every time we're out there, we're upgrading it. So we're out here training and coming up with new ideas and changing things. And so people will see it that saw it last year, will come see it again this coming season and be, wow, I didn't see all that stuff. This is a totally different thing.
Every one of the performers you see here is either a powerhouse aerialist or vaulter, or both. For them, this may have started as a hobby, but now it's a way of life. Eric was on his first pony at the age of 3 and ended up competing internationally as an equestrian vaulter. Alethea also competed nationally as a vaulter. Nicole and Lisa are as comfortable standing on the back of a 2,000-pound horse as you and I would be standing on solid ground. What they do with these horses and on these giant metal props is not for the faint of heart. But to hear them speak of performing, you know it comes from their heart. And they are extraordinarily dedicated to Gladius the show and their horses.
Whatever has to happen to make this work is what we do. So in the gym every day, out here working the horses every day. If we're not doing enough shows to come up with feed money, then figuring out other gigs or getting a job or doing whatever we got to do on top of that to make sure that we have the money to take care of the horses.
It's keeping ourselves conditioned, keeping all the horses very conditioned, daily care of the horses, which is feeding, cleaning, vet care, grooming. I mean, we're training at least 4 hours every day, and then we train ourselves aside from that. It is a labor of love. There's no way that we would do this if we didn't love it, because we're absolutely insane.
And as much as they love what they do on the horses, they love the horses even more.
You can tell the second you get in a pasture with them, they flock to you like puppies. So it's really obvious that they are given a lot of love. They are always fed before we are. Everything on the road, we take into consideration how it's going to be for them over what our conditions will be. They're number one in our books.
A true testament to the love they have for these gentle giants. Well, to us, they may look like carbon copies of each other. But Eric says they all know the personalities, even the gait of each and every one.
It's like twins. If you just meet them, you have no idea. They all look the same. But for us, I can literally be out here in the dark and hear them walking and know which one's which.
Twice a year, they have a performance for the community. People come out to Leon Drive near Elkhorn with folding chairs and pickup trucks to watch them perform for free.
There's not really a technical reason to do it. And it's just fun to bring the community together, have everyone come out and check it out. Make sure that they don't hate us for having all the horses and dust and everything else around.
So now you know, just as I have learned, if you are ever wandering around Northwest Las Vegas and happen upon these beauties, they're not just pretty faces, they're athletes, highly trained, and very much loved by the owners and performers of Gladius the show. A huge thank you to Alethea and Eric for always being so welcoming when we want to go do stories on their horses. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, the ongoing debate over face coverings. We're going to clear up some misconceptions.
I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Some things take a while to come back.
3, 2, champions!
But I've got some good buddies. I guess they're helping me figure it out. Being used to doing something with a cigarette makes it hard to do it without one. But if I can relearn to hang out with my friends without cigarettes, then I can relearn anything without cigarettes.
Relearn life without cigarettes. Free at becomeanx.org. A new way to think about quitting.
Everywhere that we go, he makes people laugh and makes people smile, and I feel like I have that quality.
He's the one who always takes me fishing. I watch golf with him. And
I watch him cook, because when I grow up, I want to be a cook too.
We have the same faces like this.
Dad is the one, when you fall, that picks you up.
That unconditional sense of presence and reassurance is really what makes him my father.
Welcome back to City Beat from the KCLV TV studio control room. You know, 2020 is going to be remembered for a lot of things, not the least of which is a bunch of new terms like social distancing, distance learning, personal protective equipment or PPEs. COVID-19 has been the topic of many debates and many spirited debates, mostly around masks and do they work? Who do they help? Well, producer Sue Levitt sat down with an assistant professor at UNLV on public health to actually talk about some of the misconceptions and misinformation still swirling around.
The thing that people most are, I guess you would say, misled about or don't understand about the face coverings.
The thing that I still keep hearing is that the masks don't do anything, that they don't protect anybody. And there's a little bit of confusion about changes in our recommendations about masks. Early on in the outbreak, we were telling people not to rush out and get N95 masks because we needed those for our medical professionals, people who were exposed to patients with COVID. So we would tell them not to wear a mask, not to go out and try and get that equipment that other people need. Well, as the outbreak progressed, we kind of changed why we're wearing masks. So if you're in a hospital, you're wearing that mask to protect you. Now we're talking about wearing these masks as source control, basically protecting other people from you. Because we know that 50% of the people with this disease have no symptoms. They can walk around and spread it and never know that they were sick. So by wearing a mask, it reduces the chance that you will spread it to somebody else. And if everybody is wearing a mask, that reduces the transmission within our community. And so those are the things that we're recommending now, that people basically wear masks anytime they're out in a situation where they are around other people.
And, you know, like you said, when you're wearing a mask, you're showing that you care about other people around you. You don't want to spread your germs to other people. I have a mother that's 85. And so, you know, not only do we, when we see her, not only do we stay 6 feet away from her, but we won't let anybody near her without wearing a mask. It's not to protect ourselves, it's to protect her.
Right, and that's the tough thing for people to understand. We're used to wearing safety equipment to protect ourselves. If you work on a construction site, you're putting on protective equipment so you don't hurt yourself, or maybe a hard hat so you don't get hit in the head, but you're not wearing it for somebody else. In this case, it's very, very different. We're talking about a disease that spreads among the population. So you can't just think of yourself. You have to think of yourself as a source of infection for other people. Of course, you don't want to get sick, but you also don't want to pass it on to other people. And that's why we're having people wear masks.
And I think that's another thing that at least I hear a lot is people say, oh, this isn't a big deal. This is kind of just like the common, you know, this is like the common flu or the cold. But now our state has seen over 1,000 deaths due to COVID. So what do you say to people that say this kind of stuff?
Well, if you look at the top causes of death in Nevada and nationwide, it's still climbing in Nevada, but right now nationwide, COVID is the third leading cause of death. It's right behind heart disease and cancer. So more than accidents and injuries, suicide, homicide, all those other health problems that we deal with are further down on the list than COVID. As the third leading cause of death, it's something that we obviously need to pay attention to and need to try and prevent as much as possible. And that's with only 6 months of data on this particular disease. So if we're looking at nationwide, say 2017, the most recent data we have from CDC, there are about 169,000 deaths from accidents and injuries. That was the third leading cause of death. We're over 170,000 deaths nationwide right now with just half a year worth of data. So we will continue to see this increase. This is a serious problem in Nevada and nationwide.
Yes, and I think that's an important message that we need to keep getting out there, because even though the numbers are there and the numbers are being reported, it seems like people still think that this disease isn't real. There are still people out there that think this. And also another thing that we hear is people say, well, I don't want to wear a mask because it reduces my oxygen supply. So I know you explained this in your blog, so maybe you can shed some light on this.
So there have been other Facebook posts where people put out a little pulse oximeter on their finger and try on different masks and show that it doesn't actually do anything. But it's also the common sense. If you're able to breathe through it, if you're getting air through that mask, which is the whole point, you have to be able to breathe through those things. Oxygen is coming through. People in occupational settings like doctors and nurses are wearing tougher masks for longer periods of time, and they're not passing out. If we had that sort of problem, anybody putting on a surgical mask, 10 minutes into the surgery, they'd be on the floor. And we know that's not the case. People are able to wear masks. It doesn't reduce the amount of oxygen getting into your blood. So you're still able to breathe in the oxygen and get carbon dioxide out through that mask just like normal. It traps those larger particles and keeps those from heading out, and that's what we're concerned about.
Well, as we said, the year 2020 will not soon be forgotten. Another year forever etched in our mind is 2001. That is the year where on September 11th, America was attacked on its own soil. We have vowed to never forget. It's been 19 years and we haven't. As we go to close, we want to share just some of the ceremonies and events that have been held by the city of Las Vegas, many of our community partners, our fire department, and local businesses to remember those fallen on that day.